Greetings, dear people of God at Trinity and beloved friends beyond. Thank you for joining me for this week's reflection from the other side. So I'll begin. Nobody escapes being wounded. We're all wounded people, whether physically, mentally, or spiritually. The main question is not how can we hide from our wounds so we don't have to be embarrassed, but how can we put our woundedness in the service of others? When our wounds cease to be a source of shame and become a source of healing, we have become wounded healers. Earlier today, Michael passed along this quote from a friend who suggested that I might find it meaningful. It's from Henry Nouwen's The Wounded Healer, Ministry in Contemporary Society. Meaningful? It transported me to another time in my life. It sent me down to our dining room library to scan the shelves unsuccessfully for this treasured dog-eared book that led me to my vocation as a priest 45 years ago and has kept me company along my priestly path ever since. Nouwen was a professor of pastoral theology at Yale Divinity School when I was at Yale as an undergrad and headed, I thought, for medical school. Although in those days I thought of myself as a follower of the Reverend Bill Coffin with his political activism in the name of the Prince of Peace, I found myself sneaking in to Nouwen's standing room only lectures on pastoral theology, speaking to me in ways I didn't even understand. He offered a theology of service to humanity that recognized that the fundamental suffering in all humanity is a way to serve as a source of healing for all humanity, including healing for ourselves. Although I couldn't put my hand on my original copy, I did what we all do. I Googled top 20 quotes from The Wounded Healer. They spoke to me now on the other side more than ever before, personally, powerfully, and prophetically. If I happen to loan it to you, could I get it back? As I will be reflecting more on The Wounded Healer in the weeks to come as Holy Week approaches and Easter dawns. Frederick Beekner, another source of inspiration in my life, is also someone I have not visited in a long time. In his memoir, Telling Secrets, he writes, "Maybe nothing is more important than that we keep track, you and I, of the stories of who we are and where we've come from and what we've experienced and the people we have met along the way. It is precisely through these stories and all their particularity that God, who is love, is made known to each of us most powerfully and personally. Memories of the sufferings and the joys, the sad things and glad things, can become a source of wisdom and strength for what lies ahead. Signposts through the desert. Jesus shows us how God meets us at those moments at which, for better or worse, we find ourselves being most human, most ourselves. And if we lose touch with those moments, if we don't stop to notice what is happening to us and around us and inside us, we run the tragic risk of losing touch with God, who is love too." Back to Nouwen. First takeaway, we are all wounded. Ernest Hemingway writes, "The world breaks everyone, and afterward many are strong at the broken places." This is what happened to my father. He became strong at the broken places. A year after his arrival as rector of All Saints by the Sea in Santa Barbara, my father's first wife, Mary, was killed in an automobile accident. He died in my father's arms. He had been driving. Although he was not responsible for her death, he always felt that there was something he might have done to save her. His life went on. He and my mother were married a few years later, and a year later my twin and I were born, and then 2 other siblings. My father became a renowned, remarkable pastor. He had become strong in all the broken places. How many times would he say to us, "Without love, the love of the All Saints community, the love of my family and friends, I would not have survived." He used his wounds to give comfort and strength to others. People needing comfort and hope knew that he understood their suffering even if they didn't know his story. And in deeply profound ways, it helped heal his woundedness. I now can say from my heart, and know it to be true, that my wounds, my cancer, have helped me to better understand, to empathize with the suffering of others, their need for comfort and hope, their need for company along the way. They are what make me able to look you, my brothers and sisters, in the eyes and say with all my heart, yes, I know the desert seems endless, but I have felt love here, and I am here with you, and we will make it through. Nothing can separate us from that love. My second takeaway from the Wounded Healer is the importance of hospitality. Nouwen speaks of creating the space for hospitality in our lives, building space into our days which opens us up for the interruptions. This space we keep open for the Spirit to fill, to take an older neighbor to the grocery store, to listen to the person who calls on the phone and doesn't really even know why, to make room for a family displaced by a flood or a refugee crisis, or to drop off fresh flowers or walk the dog or wake up far too early to drive me to radiation. Right here in front of us, right in our church and in our communities, there are some who suffer the wounds of loneliness, depression, disease, misuse and abuse of an unforgiven past. Your response might be, but what can I do for these people? I'm just too busy. I am inadequate. And the truth is, I am wounded too. My response to you would be, exactly. That is the point. That's the reason you are the one to help, because you have been helped. You have known the need for help. Third, I was impressed by Nouwen's insistence that loneliness and suffering have a place of purpose. Loneliness, he says, is something that Christ does not take away, but something that Christ protects and cherishes as a gift. In the past months, I've spent more time awake and alone than ever in my life, but I've found a deeper understanding of myself through my aloneness. I would not have chosen to walk through this season of suffering, but I know that in my time alone, I've gotten to learn what it means to rely on God and God alone, God who is love. There was nowhere else to turn, no one else to turn to in the darkness of a cancer diagnosis, and of nights awake and of days awake, exhausted, nauseated, aching, afraid, and angry. I remember, though, in the darkness of the nights and days, moments when I sensed a presence, and the presence was love. In the darkness of the days and the nights, I felt loved, and my soul was quiet. My soul rested in the lap of that love. I felt comfort and hope. In Psalm 131 we hear, Lord, my heart is not lifted up, my eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me, but I have calmed and quieted my soul, like a child quieted at its mother's breast, like a child that is quieted is my soul. O Israel, your hope is in God, both now and forevermore. What if, recognizing our own woundedness, the woundedness in others, in our country and in our world, we strive to become wounded healers, not just allowing but inviting the suffering we all share to bring us together, to set us free, to live in love, to lead with love. Amen.